You're trash, Claire. You've always been trash. And trash belongs in the dumpster, not in my hotel. Victoria Ashford's voice echoed through the marble lobby of the Belmont Grand, loud enough for every guest, every employee, every person who'd ever looked through Claire Dawson to hear. Claire stood there, still in her housekeeping uniform, clutching a termination notice that wasn't even folded, just crumpled into her hands like garbage. But what Victoria didn't know, what none of them knew, was that the trash she was throwing out had just inherited $847 million from a grandmother she'd never mentioned. Old money. The kind that built hotels like the Belmont 70 years ago. In exactly 18 months, Claire would walk back through those doors, not as the invisible housekeeper, as the owner. This is the story of a woman they erased, humiliated, and discarded, who came back and bought their entire world. If you believe everyone deserves to be seen, subscribing helps us spend countless hours crafting stories of people who refused to stay invisible. Now let me take you back to where it all began. 3 years. Claire Dawson had worked at the Belmont Grand for 3 years, and most people still didn't know her name. She was the housekeeper who made beds so perfectly that guests thought they'd walked into magazine spreads. The one who remembered Mr. Chen in Suite 408 needed his newspapers ironed, who left origami swans for the honeymooners in the presidential suite. She was invisible labor, the kind that only gets noticed when something goes wrong. The marble floors she mopped reflected crystal chandeliers worth more than her annual salary. The sheets she changed had higher thread counts than her own. And every day, she walked past the hotel's original foundation plaque. Built by Thornton Hospitality, 1952. Her grandmother's company. But nobody knew that. Nobody knew anything about Claire except that she was quiet, kept her head down, and, according to Victoria Ashford, the hotel's general manager, looked like she'd crawled out of a thrift store dumpster. Victoria Ashford was everything Claire wasn't. 6 feet tall in Louboutins, blonde hair that moved in slow motion, a voice that could cut glass and frequently did. She'd started calling Claire trash 6 months ago. It began as a whisper. Did trash take care of the penthouse? And grew bolder. By month 3, she said it to Claire's face. By month 6, she said it in front of guests. I used to cry about it, Claire thought, restocking minibar champagne she'd never taste, the invisibility, the cruel nicknames. But somewhere between the 20th insult and the funeral last week, I stopped crying. I stopped caring what she thought of me. Maybe that's what freedom looks like. The end came on a Tuesday. Claire was walking past the executive conference room, the one with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city when she saw it. A coffee spill spreading across the white carpet like a stain on silk. She didn't think. Just grabbed her cart and started working, her hands moving in the practiced rhythm of someone who'd cleaned 1,000 messes. She didn't hear Victoria until it was too late. What are you doing? Claire looked up. The conference room was full. Board members, investors, people in suits that cost more than her car, and Victoria standing in the doorway, face flushed with rage. There was a spill. You were just interrupting a private meeting. Victoria's voice dropped to something dangerous. Do you have any idea who these people are? Yes, Claire thought. I've cleaned their rooms. I know exactly who they are. But she said nothing. Get out! Claire backed away, her cartwheels squeaking against marble. 20 minutes later, she was called to Victoria's office. The termination papers were already printed. "You're done here," Victoria said, not looking up from her computer. "Effective immediately." "I was cleaning a spill." "You were embarrassing this hotel. You've been embarrassing this hotel since the day we hired you." Victoria finally looked at her, and Claire saw something in those ice-blue eyes. Not just cruelty, satisfaction. "You're trash, Claire. You've always been trash, and I'm making sure every hotel in this city knows it." She slid a piece of paper across the desk, a blacklist letter. Claire's hands didn't shake when she signed the papers. They should have shaken. She'd just lost everything. But all she felt was relief. The funeral had been small. Margaret Thornton, heiress, philanthropist, estranged grandmother, was buried on a gray Wednesday in a cemetery where the headstones looked like marble mansions. Claire had stood alone at the graveside, wearing her one black dress that wasn't a uniform. She hadn't seen her grandmother in 20 years. Not since her mother's bitter divorce from the family had severed every connection, every inheritance, every acknowledgement that they'd once mattered. "You're Jennifer's daughter," the attorney had said after the service, rain drumming on his umbrella. "Margaret never stopped watching you." The portfolio was thick. Investments, properties, holdings in hotel chains, including, Claire's breath had caught, a significant minority stake in Ashford Management Group, the company that currently operated the Belmont Grand. Total value, $847 million. "She left specific instructions," the attorney continued. "She said you'd know what to do with it when the time was right." Claire had looked at the papers, then at the hotel skyline in the distance. The time is right, she'd thought. 18 months disappeared like water. Claire didn't rage, didn't post on social media, didn't warn anyone. She just learned. Business school at night. Not the degree, just the knowledge. She sat in lectures at Columbia, notebook open, absorbing everything about hospitality management, acquisitions, corporate restructuring. She met with investors her grandmother had trusted, quiet people with old money and long memories. "You're Margaret's granddaughter," they'd say, recognition dawning. "You have her eyes." She learned the Belmont Grand was struggling. Occupancy down 12%. Guest complaints up. Staff turnover at crisis levels. Victoria Ashford was running it into the ground with her cruelty and ego. The owners, a private equity firm that had bought it 5 years ago, were quietly looking for an exit. The offer came through Thornton Holdings LLC, a shell company within a shell company. Nothing that traced back to Claire. The price, $340 million for the property and operations. The condition, immediate closing. All existing staff contracts honored pending new management review. The private equity firm jumped at it. Victoria Ashford had no idea. She was too busy running the Belmont Grand like her personal kingdom, too focused on her next humiliation, her next victim. But here's what they didn't know. Claire had spent those 18 months tracking every employee Victoria had destroyed. 23 people fired or forced out. Careers ended. Reputations ruined. She'd contacted each one, quietly. "When the time comes," she'd said, "would you want to come back?" 21 had said yes. The sale closed on a Monday morning. Claire was in the attorney's office signing the final documents. Her hand, calloused from 3 years of housekeeping, signed her full legal name. Claire Margaret Thornton Dawson. The same signature her grandmother had used to build the hotel 70 years ago. "When will you tell them?" the attorney asked. Claire looked out the window at the Belmont Grand's Art Deco spire cutting into the sky. when I'm ready to watch them realize exactly who they threw away. Her phone lit up. A text from Marcus Chen, the former concierge Victoria had fired for insubordination. He'd defended a housekeeper Victoria was berating. Victoria just got the memo. New owner taking possession Friday. Staff meeting mandatory. She's panicking. Claire smiled for the first time in 18 months. This Friday, she thought. 3 days. But what she didn't know was that Victoria had one last move to make. On Wednesday afternoon, Victoria called an emergency meeting. "The new owners are corporate raiders," she announced to the assembled staff, her voice dripping with rehearsed concern. "They're going to gut this place, fire half of you, destroy everything we've built." She paused for effect. "But if we stand together, if we show them this hotel runs on loyalty and excellence, we can survive this. I need each of you to sign these contracts, commitments to stay on for the next 3 years under my leadership, regardless of ownership changes." She was trying to make herself unfireable, to lock herself in before the new owner could clean house. Claire heard about it within the hour. She sat in her apartment, still modest, still small, and felt something she hadn't let herself feel in months. Comment below. What would you do if you were Claire right now? Friday morning. Claire walked through the front doors of the Belmont Grand at exactly 9 a.m. She wore a charcoal suit her grandmother would have approved of. Her hair, usually in a messy bun, fell in soft waves. She carried a leather portfolio and wore confidence like armor. The lobby went silent, not because anyone recognized her, but because power is always recognizable. Victoria was waiting in the executive conference room, the same room where Claire had been humiliated 18 months ago. The same white carpet, professionally cleaned, no trace of that coffee stain. The staff was assembled, board members on video call, everyone who'd signed Victoria's loyalty contracts, thinking they were protecting their jobs. Victoria stood at the head of the table, her smile sharp and ready. "Ladies and gentlemen, our new owner," she stopped. The color drained from her face like water from a broken glass. "You." Claire set her portfolio on the table. "Hello, Victoria. This is a joke." Victoria's voice cracked. You couldn't possibly." "Afford this hotel?" Claire opened the portfolio. "Thornton Holdings LLC, that's me. Well, that's my grandmother's legacy. Margaret Thornton, the woman who built this hotel in 1952. She looked around the room at the staff, some confused, some recognizing her now, some beginning to smile. "My grandmother built this place on a simple principle. Hospitality means seeing people, really seeing them. Not their uniforms or their positions, but who they are." Her eyes locked on Victoria. "You called me trash. For 6 months, you made that my name. You fired me for cleaning a spill. You tried to blacklist me from an entire industry." Her voice didn't shake, didn't rise, just cut clean through the air. "You tried to erase me because you couldn't see me. None of you could. Victoria Ashford, your employment is terminated effective immediately. Those contracts you had everyone sign? Voided. They were made under false pretenses and without owner approval." Victoria's mouth opened, closed, opened again. "You can't do this." "I can, and I am." Claire turned to the staff. "For everyone else, you have jobs if you want them. I've already rehired 21 people Victoria fired unjustly. They'll be returning Monday." She paused at the door. "This hotel was built by a woman who believed everyone mattered. It's going to be run that way again." Victoria stood frozen as Claire walked out. The woman she'd called trash, who just bought her entire world. The Belmont Grand's occupancy hit 93%. Staff retention, highest in the city. Guest satisfaction scores, off the charts. Claire still walked the halls sometimes, still noticed the details, but now she saw them from the other side. As an owner who'd once been invisible labor, who understood exactly what it meant to be seen, she'd replaced the original foundation plaque with a new one. The Belmont Grand, built by Margaret Thornton, 1952. Restored by her legacy, 2026, everyone who enters here matters. Victoria Ashford worked at a budget motel in Newark now. Nobody called her by name there either. Sometimes the people you overlook are the ones who've been watching all along. And sometimes, just sometimes, trash is actually treasure you were too blind to see. Drop a heart if you think Claire handled this the right way. And if you've ever been underestimated, let me know in the comments. Your story matters. If this story moved you, subscribing helps us tell more stories about people who refuse to stay invisible. Because everyone deserves to be seen.